What's up everybody and welcome to the Fight Franchise, and a different style of video I'm doing today where I'm going to be breaking down the kind of new huge announcement in the fight world where Dana White and turkial have announced they are starting their own boxing league in a bid to try and take over boxing. I've been seeing a lot of videos and a lot of takes and a lot of what's going on from a lot of different journalists. I've been reading on the forums how boxing people feel about this. They don't think it's a big thing. It's going to be the same as it was before, and I'm going to kind of give my 2 cents on it and kind of break it down. I know I mainly cover MMA content, but I do love boxing. This is the Fight Franchise, and I've always wanted to do boxing content as well. So I'm hoping this is the start of doing boxing content as well. I know I've done 1 or 2 boxing videos where I broke down Gervonta Davis versus Ryan Garcia, and then I also did one of my favorite videos I've done on the channel, which is the top 10 Mexican boxers of all time. But this is going to be a different kind of style of video because I cover mainly MMA and I kind of know MMA I would say quite well. I'm kind of going to break down how this new kind of league, as they're saying, is going to work, TKO boxing, what I see and what is going to happen. So let me kind of give you a rundown of how I think it's going to go and give my 2 cents on it. So TKO boxing, they're not here to play any games, they're here to take over. This is what they're going to try and do. They're going to try and build a UFC equivalent for boxing. What that means is a structured system of a league, where not a league but rankings, where you fight up the rankings, you get a title shot, and the best fight the best. How MMA is, how the UFC is, where we see Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier work their way up the rankings, fighting contenders, earning a title shot. It's going to be the equivalent in the UFC, where we see fighters and boxers get wins, go up the ranking, where if you're number 1, number 2 in the rankings, you're going to earn that title shot, rather than making the money fights, the big fights. This guy's got a belt, this guy's got a belt, let's unify. Or sometimes we see fighters on a 7-fight contract where, oh, okay, that contract is a hefty amount of millions. Oh, let's just get what we can out of that contract. So Canelo has a 7-fight contract. Instead of fighting the best, he fights this mandatory, or he just fights this guy, and he's basically milking that contract for all the money. This isn't that. This is you fight the best, you earn your way up the rankings. And what we see in boxing, which is huge, that O, which is protected for so long, because there's a lot of money and a lot of stock in that O, a lot less fighters will remain and keep their O going forward in boxing if this becomes a thing. What they're going to do, TKO boxing, they're going to lay the foundation to create the biggest boxing roster in the next 10 years. So that's going to be the plan for TKO boxing. As the UFC has, the UFC I think has 300 to 500 fighters on their roster, I want to say. They've got a hefty amount of numbers on their roster. That's what the UFC is going to try and do. They're going to try and create a massive roster of boxers where they're going to monopolize the boxing market, where all the best boxers in the world fight on their promotion, rather than all the best boxers, Tyson Fury's at Queensberry Promotions, Anthony Joshua's at Matchroom Boxing. Oh, we've got to negotiate this, we've got to negotiate that for them to fight. That's not going to happen here. They're all going to be under one banner and they're all going to fight each other because they're all under and owned by one promotion. They're also going to try and streamline boxing into a brand. A lot of people, when we watch boxing, we go to watch the card. We go to watch the main event. Let me give you an example. When Ryan Garcia fought Gervonta Davis, can anybody even name the undercard? No. We went to watch the main event. We all wanted to see the show that was on there. I think you can go card by card, and until recently where turkial named these super cards, that's what boxing's been. It's been show up for the main event. You see it in a lot of boxing fights where the crowd is very empty until the main event and co-main event, where they start to flood in and they're there for the big fight. This isn't going to be that. This is going to be building boxing into a brand where regardless of who's fighting, you're going to tune in. That's what the UFC is. That's what the WWE is. Those 3 letters mean more than the fighters. With UFC now, you know what you're getting. You've got the brand, you've got the fighters. It's the best fight, the best. It could be irregardless. They put on fight nights in Kansas City and people show up. This flooded, people watch. We go to watch the cards and the fights that they put on and the show that they put on. That's what it's going to be now. It's regardless of who's on the card. They want you to tune in. They want to make boxing the brand, not the fighters. For so long, Floyd Mayweather, Canelo, Amir Khan, whoever, that was the brand. You go to watch that fighter. Going forward is you're going to go to watch boxing, irregardless of who's fighting. you're watching. That's what they want. They want to monopolize boxing. They want to be the biggest player in town. They don't want it to be scattered all over the place. They want to run boxing. You know, boxing is a huge cash cow. MMA's became a huge cash cow due to the likes of Ronda Rousey, Chuck Liddell, Conor McGregor, John Jones, Khabib, all these guys who have helped grow the sport, build the sport. But boxing has 100 years worth of history on its side, 100 years plus, and it is a juggernaut compared to mixed martial arts. And if done right, can become a huge market and player in the sports world. You know, combat sports in the sports world, if you just watch combat sports, it seems massive, but the combat sports world compared to the rest of sports is nothing. Like football or soccer, as Americans call it, shits on the numbers that, you know, the combat sports world do. You know, if you think about combat sports, you're like, oh my God, we sold a 25,000 seater stadium, blah, blah, blah. Football does that every week in, week out, all across the world. So what they want to do is put on massive shows, monopolize boxing so they can drain as much money as they can, similar to how they're doing in the WWE and UFC, where weekly shows, weekly turnouts, huge turnouts. You know, boxing, you show up for the huge pay-per-views and the huge cards, but who's watching the top rank shows every week? Who's watching the small shows that come on every week? You know, TNT Sports just did a small card recently. Who's going to show up to watch that? They want everyone watching every card. Create a linear belt structure. Boxing, we've all said it. There's belts everywhere. WBC, WBO, IBF, IBO, Ring Magazine. All the belts are scattered everywhere. Who's the best in the world? Do all these people with the belts fight each other? Very rarely. They need to be forced to fight each other to find out who's the undisputed. Scrap that, create a linear belt structure. That's going to be the goals for TKO boxing. So, who's on board and who's the team? Let's meet the team for TKO boxing. We've got at the helm and kind of the cash of the system, Turki Al-Sheikh, His Excellency. He's the cash, he's the funds, he's the ambition. He's the most influential man in combat sports at the moment, and probably we're ever going to see. He is the man who is going to run combat sports in the next 10, 15 years if he has his way. You know, this guy has unlimited pockets. You know, with that Saudi money, he can fund whatever fight he wants. He can fund whatever event he wants. He's going to have a boxing match in Times Square. That is mental. Who else is going to do that? Who else has got the funds to shut down a major city like New York, a major place like Times Square, and go, yeah, I'm putting a boxing match in there? And now he's saying, I'm going to have a boxing match in Alcatraz Island. It's amazing what he's doing. He helped, remember, Dana White did the Sphere, but it was backed by Riyadh Season. The Sphere was an amazing event, but Turki Al-Sheikh had a stake in that. He put money into that. So this is the cash, this is the funds, and he is the man with the ambition to take over boxing. He is the kind of guy who's going to try and make this all happen. He wants to run boxing and sees it as a chance to, first of all, bring combat sports to that side of the world, the Arab world and the eastern side of the world. You know, for so long the West has ran combat sports. Vegas has been the home of combat sports. He's going to try and make Saudi Arabia and that area of the world the new hub for huge fights, huge combat sports, but also it's a play when you think of what they're trying to do on that side of the world. Yes, they've got huge amounts of oil and money and reserves. Once that runs out, where's your money going to come from? Tourism. It's a huge reason why Dubai and Abu Dhabi's become a huge kind of space in that side of the world, because they have oil reserves, they have great money there, but once those oil reserves finish, how are they going to make money? Tourism. Bring you guys from the West here and then kind of make money through the tourism, through events, through the biggest skyscraper in the world, through all these amazing things that the West doesn't have. So that's what he's going to do. Build Saudi Arabia as the next combat sports world, where all us fans from here go there and watch the shows and put money into their pockets. Who else have we got on the team? Dana White, ruthless promoter, created the biggest MMA promotion ever, a visionary, 20 plus years experience and knowledge in production and the combat sports world, and most importantly, we'll go on to it later, a friend of Donald Trump. Dana White, president of the UFC, helped build the UFC as the brand it is today, and he is the one that Turki Al-Sheikh has gone, oh, I'm going to team up and align with you to help me create my new boxing brand. Not Frank Warren, not Eddie Hearn, not Oscar De La Hoya, not Bob Arum. No one in the boxing space. He's gone to Dana White, somebody in a different combat sports world. There's a reason why. Nick Khan, who else is behind this? WWE president, TKO board member, huge player in the media space in his time dealing with ESPN. He also influenced the WWE to go onto Netflix. Before that, I believe they were on ESPN and Fox Sports, but now WWE is exclusively on Netflix, including all their pay-per-views. And during his time at ESPN, I watched an interview with Ariel Helwani where he said he was quoted as the most powerful non-employee at ESPN, and he also made the deal for Top Rank to be on ESPN. So this guy, within the business side of it, with the media side of it, he's going to play a huge factor in deciding where this boxing is going to go, how it's going to be shown and streamed to us, how he is going to have a huge say, and he's going to be a huge player on the behind the scenes. On the left side, you got Turkey and Dana, where these guys are the fighting face of it. But the Nick Khan, he's one of the businessmen behind it, and he's going to be a huge factor on how we're all going to watch this. Because if he can get a deal with Netflix, everyone's got Netflix, most people in the world have Netflix. It's easily accessible, it's live streaming, it's not behind a pay-per-view wall, which, I saw a quote recently where Dana White doesn't even like that model anymore because less people are buying pay-per-views because of streaming taking over. If Nick Khan can cut that deal with Netflix and say, you can get the UFC and our new boxing promotion, sky's the limit. So yeah, Nick Khan, huge player in the background. Ari Emanuel, the CEO of TKO and Endeavour, one of the biggest and most influential people in Western media. Let's not pretend who this guy is. He is one of the owners and CEOs of TKO and helped build it. And this is a huge conglomerate in the fighting world. And this guy has a lot of pull within the media space, so he can make things happen for them in promotional aspects in the Western Hemisphere with the Hollywood scene and all that kind of stuff. This guy can make things happen. So this is the ragtag group of team that we've got at the minute, and they're the ones who are going to try and build TKO boxing and try and get it to where it is, which is the biggest global boxing brand in the world. Current day boxing, how does it look? Current day boxing is split out amongst many promotions where you've got Top Rank, Matchroom Boxing, Queensberry, Golden Boy, PBC. You've got all these kind of boxing promotions, and they all hold a different roster of fighters where they come together and make super fights happen. For so many years, these fights have been difficult to make. Why? Because money, cut, splits of purses, promotion, who's going to put on the fight, where they're going to put on the fight. It's been so difficult to do, where all these kind of promotion have different best fighters. You look at Matchroom, they've got Shakur Stevenson, Conor Benn, Anthony Joshua, Katie Taylor, Dimitri Bivol. And then you look at someone like Top Rank, they've got Beterbiev, Inoue, Kambosos, Vasily Lomachenko, just to name a few. And it's making fights happen between these fighters, but the sticking point is, we want X amount, we want X amount. And negotiations and dealings for over the years have been very difficult to make happen until turkial Sheikh came in and he goes, oh, you're struggling to make the fights? No problem, I'll help fund them. Here's the purse, make the fight happen. I'll give you a location as well. Oh, we'll do it in Saudi Arabia. It funds the fighters' purses, it funds the promotions' purses, and it's kind of helped fighting and boxing being the best place it's had. Eddie Hearn did an interview where he said boxing isn't broken. No, it's not, but Turki Al-Sheikh has helped fix boxing, and a lot of the mistakes is happening with the funds and the money he's injected into boxing. But that is how current day boxing looks. Multiple promotions all spread out where they're all coming together to make fights happen, but it's been a struggle for so many years. For how long did it take for Terence Crawford to fight Errol Spence? Took ages for them to fight. Even if you look in the olden days of boxing, we all knew Floyd Mayweather should have fought Manny Pacquiao. I know it was Floyd being smart and waiting for him, Pacquiao to age, and then once he lost to Marquez, he was like, okay, now I'll fight him. But even then, it's taken ages. It takes ages for boxing fights to happen. So that's how current day boxing spread out. It's a bunch of different promotions with a bunch of different fighters trying to come together and make fights happen, sometimes successfully, sometimes not so successfully. Within the boxing world, you have a bunch of governing bodies which are there to sanction the fights, protect the fighters, put the judges in place, put the referees in place, where you've got the WBO, WBA, IBF, IBL, WBC. You've got all these organizations who oversee the boxing sphere and make sure it's a level playing field. Because if there was, it goes back into the history of boxing, where if there was like a singular promotion, there was a lot of money bet in the olden days on boxing. Fight fixing was a huge thing. This was there to kind of help mitigate that and, look after the boxers and make sure it's a even playing field, and they are there to oversee and sanction boxing. But have they run their course? Have they for too long, been making easy money, sanctioning these fights, supplying all the things needed for these fighters? But now that it's the modern day, should have these guys formed one big union and come together? Or are they needed in boxing as such? Are they needed as multiple organizations? The UFC, they fight under their own banner. They are their own promotion. They supply their own referees. They supply their own kind of kit men and, corner men and all that kind of stuff. The only people that they don't supply are the judges, which is done by, the athletic commissions. Should boxing have more type of athletic commissions, state by state, country by country? Because they do. I know they have boxing councils and stuff, but are these organizations who also supply the belts needed? That's what the UFC, Turkial Sheikh and Dana White will argue and say, look, this is an outdated model. We need the UFC model in boxing. So what are TKO Boxing going to try and do? They are trying to make boxing streamlined. They want one belt per weight class. They want it to be, we know this guy has the belt, he's the best. This guy holds the belt at middleweight, he's the best. This guy holds the belt at cruiserweight, he's the best. Because there's so many belts in boxing and no one's fighting each other, it makes it difficult to find out who is actually the best. And because there's 5 different champions, let's say if there's 5 titles in the weight division in boxing and there's 5 different people holding each belt, that's 5 different champions. If they never fight each other, who is the champion of that division? They all champions, or is there one champion? It kind of dilutes that belt. It's like this guy gets a WBC silver belt, this guy gets a WBC gold belt, this guy's got who is the best? It's kind of saturated that championship belt. It's kind of made it valueless. What the TKO Boxing is going to try and do is bring that back. How? One belt per weight class, so this guy's the champ, this guy's the best. He is the number one in his division. They're going to also want consistent rankings. The rankings in boxing are a bit weird. They are consistent in where people are placed, but it's sometimes the guy who's, next in line below the champion, he won't get a title shot. It'll be someone completely out of random, because that's who the boxing promoters can only make a fight with because of purse and money issues and dealings. So what they're going to want, TKO Boxing, is consistent rankings where you work your way up the rankings, you earn your title shot like you do in the UFC. Like a guy can come in at 15, like let's say for example Charles Oliveira, when he went from featherweight to lightweight. Charles Oliveira, if you don't know, boxing fans, he's a UFC fighter who fought in the featherweight division, 145 pounds, struggled there, came up to 155 pounds, went on an amazing win streak. He got like 10 finishes out of 11 fights, submissions and TKOs, worked his way up the rankings until he earned himself a title shot for vacant gold because Khabib retired, and then he won the title. It's visible. He worked his way up outside the rankings of the lightweight division, got into the lightweight rankings, went from 15th to 14th to 10th to 7th to 4th to 1st, and then his title shot. That's what they want for TKO Boxing, consistent and fair rankings for fighters. The other thing they have expressed, and Dana White has expressed, is less weight classes in boxing. I'm not a big fan of this, but I get why, because it again means it gets more super fights done, but it means also that less value of titles. If there's like £5 difference in weight classes, it kind of devalues. It's like more champions for no reason. If you create less champions, more people fight each other and you get more stock in that one title. He wants it like similar to the UFC rankings where it goes 125, 135, 145, 155, 170, 185, 205 and 225, which is heavyweight. I'm not a fan of this. Mainly reason being is because weight cuts in boxing, it will encourage extreme weight cutting, and in a sport like boxing where you're hitting each other in the head with these huge gloves on, we see it in boxing quite often now. I think the average is not in like major boxing, but in promotions all over the world, there's around 10 deaths per year in boxing. And if you get people to do extreme weight cuts because they're not seeing success in one weight class and they drop down, into another weight class, which is a 10-pound drop maybe, let's say for example, you could see someone get really hurt if they have a bad weight cut, get in the octagon and they take a couple of bad blows to the head. You know, you could get someone very, very hurt, very injured, and worst case scenario, a death. And that would kill the brand dead stop. So less weight classes, I get why. Maybe a different weight range between the weight classes, maybe not 10 pounds, maybe 7 pounds or something like that, which is more reasonable. Oh, I wouldn't want to endanger the fighters. You know, fighter safety is key. That's the last thing you would want, because first of all, no, you don't want to see like, you know, Pritchard Colon, for example. He's a boxer who, I think he took a back of the head shot, and then now look at him, he's in a vegetative state. You know, he's kind of bedbound and paralyzed. We don't want to see that again in boxing. Fighter safety is key. So them draining themselves to weight classes which probably aren't their more natural weight classes, we don't need that. So less weight classes I'm not a fan of, but that is what TKO Boxing is proposing. The best for the TKO belt, they've expressed that, you know, they have no interest in the WBC belt, IBF, WBO, IBA belt. They don't care about these belts. They couldn't give a crap. They want you to fight for the TKO belt, which is going to be their championship, which signifies you are the best boxer in the world. That is what TKO Boxing, Turkey and Dana want to create. The UFC structure for boxing, you know, I alluded to it earlier. They want 8 weight classes for the men's divisions, let's say 4 or 5 for the women's division, where you work your way up the rankings, you get into the top 15 and you earn yourself a title shot, and you fight on these TKO boxing cards where they're going to put on a bunch of shows yearly to try and figure out who is the best boxer in the world. So what's the plan? It's going to be a 10-year plan, I believe, to acquire the best talent pool in boxing. The UFC did this in MMA. You know, in MMA in the early days, UFC was one of the early promotions, and there was other promotions all around the world. You know, Shooter was a key promotion in the start, but that was a derivative of professional wrestling. UFC was one of the big promotions and became the biggest promotion. Alongside them was the Pride Fighting Championships in Japan. After a while, Pride Fighting Championships put on these huge contracts, huge money, and there was a lot of dealings in the background with the Yakuza and whatnot, and they couldn't sustain it. And the UFC goes, okay, Pride Fight Championships, you can't run anymore? No problem. Dana White goes to Lorenzo Fertitta and goes, okay, give me the money, let's buy their catalogue and let's get a bunch of their roster over. Again, same thing with Strikeforce. Strikeforce was a huge promotion in California and a rival to the UFC, and they put on some amazing MMA shows. But once their cash ran out, they had a great talent pool. Daniel Cormier was on there. Fabricio Verdum, I believe, was fighting at the time. Fedor Emelianenko was there. Luke Rockhold was there. Tyron Woodley was there. Robbie Lawler, Nick Diaz. There was a whole roster of great fighters. Even women's MMA. There was Ronda Rousey, Miesha Tate there. There was a huge roster of fighters. But when that finished, okay, we'll take that. And they're not buying the promotion. They don't care about the promotion. Once the promotion finishes, bin it off. They just want the roster. World Series of Fighting. They brought that over. The most notorious fighter from World Series of Fighting, Justin Gaethje. When WEC couldn't fight, WEC held Jose Aldo and held a bunch of the smaller fighters from 125 to 135 pounds and 145 pounds. Uriah Faber, Demetrius Johnson. When they couldn't, run as much in the UFC, goes, okay, we'll acquire them and take the divisions, and we'll just take their divisions and just put the UFC belt there, and we've got divisions. They're not there to acquire the promotions, they're there to acquire the talent pool. That's what the UFC did, and now they've created the best, biggest roster in the world, and that's what TKO Boxing is going to try and do. They're going to try and go to Queensberry Fighters and go, you're making how much there? You're doing what there? Come on. Matchroom Boxing are paying you how much? Oh, no. Come on. Golden Boy? Yeah, come over here. That's what the plan is to acquire the best talent pool in boxing. Because if you've got the biggest talent pool, you can put on a promotion. You don't need Eddie Hearn, you don't need Frank Warren, you don't need all the promotions. You need the boxers. The boxers are the key to this. So this is what their plan is going to be over the next 10 years. I think a lot of people are thinking this is going to be a 5-year thing for TKO Boxing and Turkey Al-Sheikh and Dana White. No. This is a long-term plan. This is going to take a while to build. And this is going to be this is the key building block, is getting that talent pool in boxing for the future. And here's what they're going to try and do. You've got Canelo Alvarez isn't the fighter they want. Canelo Alvarez is coming towards the end of his career and he is making multiple millions. TKO Boxing don't want him. TKO Boxing want the next Olympians. They want the Olympic silver medalist. They want the Olympic gold medalist. They want the Olympic bronze medalist. They want those talented up-and-comers that they can build the promotion on for the future. Because if this Olympic gold medalist finishes, let's say from, I don't know, Brazil, Bahrain, Uzbekistan, wherever he's from, and they go, oh, you finished boxing, come over to TKO Boxing, we'll give you 100k per fight on a 10-fight contract. That's $1 million. That guy's probably never ever seen that much money in his life. How much is Frank Warren going to offer him? How much is Queensbury going to offer him? How much is Matchroom and Eddie Hearn going to offer him? How much is Oscar De La Hoya going to offer a brand new Olympic gold medalist boxer in his first fight? They're not going to offer him that. These guys can. They can go, yeah, you want to hunt, because they know we can build a new star off of him. This is an investment. That 100k for a brand new boxer in his debut seems like a lot of money. For these guys, it's an investment, but also it gets his brain wired to, oh, these guys are looking after me and they're going to take care of me. Not knowing in the long run, in the old kind of way boxing was, he would become a multi-millionaire if his trajectory stays on the path it is and he gets to 30-0 and wins all the world titles. Here, they will try and create, don't get it wrong, a pricing structure like they have in the UFC, so boxers are quote-unquote exploited. This is who they need, and there is an act in place, which is the Ali Act, which is in place for promotions and boxing promoters not to exploit fighters. The Ali Act has been in place now for, I think, since 1980s or 1990s, I want to say. And it is a very good act because these boxers, they deserve a lot of money for for all they put in and the show they put on, and they make a crap ton of money. And if someone's making money through fighting, God bless them. I hope they make even more money. But Dana White and Turkey are going to need this rescinded. Dana White's best friend, Donald Trump, he's in office and he's signing off deals left, right and centre. Oh, Paris climate change? Yeah, no problem, we're not in it. Ukraine? Yeah, forget him, whatever. Ali Act? Oh yeah, we'll just scrap it. He's got the right person who can literally get rid of the Ali Act, where Dana White and Co and Turkey can go, okay, the Ali Act's gone, let's start acquiring boxers, let's start acquiring talent. And they can quote unquote, it won't look like exploitation at first. The first people that come in will make a heck ton of money. It'll be the generation after where they go, they'll make a little bit less, and the pricing structure will be in place where, like the UFC, if you come into the UFC, a starting fighter, 10k to show, 10k to win. It probably won't be the same pricing. It'll probably be 20k to show, 20k to win. But for a kid in Mexico who's on 30 pesos a day or whatever, 20k to show and 20k to win is life-changing money for them. And that's what they're going to do. They're going to kind of use that money to exploit these younger up-and-coming fighters who are in these poorer countries like your South and Latin America, like your Asia, who are struggling. Let's say they get an Indian or a Pakistani boxer or a boxer from Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan or something like that, who's maybe not as wealthy, and they go, yeah, 20k to show, 20k to win. He's going to be like, that's life-changing money back home. Yes, to a US fighter after they pay their trainer, their fees and whatnot, it's nothing. But to people in those countries who will help build that roster, it's a crap ton of money. So it's a huge benefit signing with Dana White, who's friends with Donald Trump, where they can go, oh, Ali Act, yeah, we can kind of amend it, change it, maybe not get rid of it because it'll come with a lot of backlash, but oh, we need to amend this, our fighter exploitation pay, blah blah blah. So that is a key reason why Turkey Al-Sheikh has probably teamed up with Dana White of all people. So boxing promoters, I know Frank Warren, Eddie Hearn have come out and they've said, this is great for boxing. When there's an injection of money, when there's a change, when there's a key, something happening in boxing, this is great for boxing. In reality, they hate this. Boxing promoters over the past 10, 15, 20 years have failed to adapt to new models, to breaking the mold, to putting on huge shows. When Turkey Al-Sheikh did the 5v5, that was a huge game-changing promotion. I think everybody tuned in, was like, this was so much fun to watch. Team captains, you get points, whatever, the winners get X amount of money, there's stakes on the line. That's the biggest thing you want in boxing. That's why, like, in fighting, if there's no stakes, it's just a fight. But when there's stakes on the line, you get that much more invested. It was a simple thing where you go, it's team versus team. For a KO, you get 2 points. For a win, you get 1 point. And for a loss, you get 0 points. And it's Eddie Hearn's team versus Frank Warren's team. That was such a simple concept that anybody could have come up with. Eddie Hearn could have gone to Frank Warren and said that. Oscar could have gone to Bob Arum and said that. None of them came up with it because they just failed to adapt and failed to promote with each other and create new concepts. And Turkial Sheikh's done this, and now all of a sudden it's just, what's it called? It was one of the best events of that year, and also it's just an injection of life and something different boxing's needed. And these promoters have failed to adapt. Another thing, these boxing promoters are very lazy. They're lazy in their product. They're lazy in their shows they put on. They're not putting on new and exciting product. It's just the same old thing. You can look at a show in 2010 and look at a show in 2020 and go, yeah, it's a carbon copy. Unless it's a Turkial Sheikh show, it's a carbon copy. Look what he did in he's doing already. Oh yeah, we're going to put a fight in on Times Square. I'm not saying you have to put on a fight in Times Square, but do something different. Try and break the mold. Yeah, you may lose a couple of million doing it, but if it's help promotes your fighters, you've actually tried, fight fans will look at you and go, okay, at least he's trying. I can get behind this promoter. I can get behind this product. I can get behind this fighter. But they just don't do that. Boxing promoters, they're money hungry for themselves. And I get it. Everyone wants to make money for themselves. At the end of the day, no human being that wants to really line somebody else's pocket. You always want to line your own pocket. Everyone's going to look after their own best interests. But for so long, they've been money hungry for themselves and not reinvesting into the product. Let's say if Eddie Hearn, Frank Warren, Bob Arum, Oscar De La Hoya, who named the promoter, they've made X amount of money off a fight card. Have they reinvested it back into something? No, they'll keep the money for themselves rather than reinvesting into boxing, grassroots boxing itself, into their promotion, into their camera work, into a new rights deal on a streaming platform. You know, DAZN was such a huge thing when it came out. What really have they done? Eddie Hearn was like a huge promoter for DAZN when it first happened and whatnot. He did the KSI and Logan fight, and he's done a couple of fights on DAZN. Other than that, what has been groundbreaking about DAZN, bar it being a streaming platform? And then the one thing we were told about DAZN was, oh, it's a streaming platform where you get the fights. But if it was a major fight, you still have to pay pay-per-view. So what was the amazing thing about DAZN? Nothing. It was just another place to watch combat sports, watch fighting and watch sports. It's because they took the money for themselves. You go to us and you sell it as, oh, it's a place where we can watch combat sports, paying a monthly subscription. Oh, great, we can just pay the monthly subscription. Yeah, but if there's a major Anthony Joshua fight on, you've got to pay pay-per-view. Well, what happened? You sold it as, I just pay my monthly subscription and I get the fight. Money hungry for themselves. And for too long now, Turkey's come in and goes, I don't care about money. I'm here to put on the best fights and take over boxing. I've got unlimited amounts of money. I've got billions and billions. This millions that you're fighting over, I've got billions, I don't care. Let me take over and let me put on the best shows. And that's what he's done. And now these guys, they're saying they're saying this is great. They're saying this is great because they don't want to fall out of bed with the cash cow. They need the Turkial Sheikh money while they can before he goes and takes over. That's what this is going to be. And yeah, as I've said, they put on average events before Turkial Sheikh. You know, bar the Wembley cards that Eddie Hearn was putting on and Frank Warren was putting on before, you know, Turkial Sheikh. Other than that, really, nothing special. How it will work, TKO Boxing. The brand will become the show, not the fighters. When the UFC promotes the fights, it's UFC 313, Alex Pereira versus Ankalaev. UFC 311, Islam Makhachev versus Renato Moicano. UFC 300, Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill. The UFC comes first. The combat sports promotion comes first. When it comes to, let's say, Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank, it's not Matchroom Boxing and Queensberry Boxing puts together Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank. It's Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank. That's the fight. When it was Mayweather versus McGregor, there was a bunch of promotions. Even the UFC was involved. Their names wasn't first. It was the boxers first. You tune in to see the boxers and the big fight they're going to put on. What they're going to try and do is make it so that you tune in irregardless whoever's fighting because it's TKO boxing. That's what the UFC's done. UFC puts on 45 shows, I want to say, a year. And that these shows you tune in. Why? Because you see the letters UFC. You know it's going to be great fights. You know it's going to be a great product. Okay, you might miss a few fight nights, but if it's a pay-per-view, you're more than likely, if you're a combat sports and an MMA fan, you're tuning in because it's UFC 314 and then it's the fighters after. Because of you're guaranteed the best MMA and combat sports product. That's what they want to do for boxing. It's the same with WWE. You don't care who's really competing. The WWE, they sell out the show, you watch, you tune in for the storylines because it's the WWE. The promotion comes first. With boxing, it's the fighters who come first. They don't want that. They want it to be, TKO's putting on 40 events a year. You know what you're getting. They're going to be amazing cards throughout the year. Buy in. It's going to be an event in San Antonio. Next week's going to be an event in Paris. Next week's going to be an event in London, XYZ. And you're going to tune in every so often, 30 shows a year maybe, and watch these supercars that they're going to, not supercars, but they're going to build some pay-per-view big cards and they'll put on like fight nights like they will in the UFC. That's how the UFC model works. You get about 14 pay-per-views a year. The rest of them are like fight night cards, which are more free cards. You don't have to pay pay-per-view for, but you just have to have like ESPN. But they do have some decent fights on. And they do have like some high-level main events. Sometimes even a title fight. Let's say, for example, if it's a UFC Noche card where they did Alexa Grasso versus Valentina Shevchenko. So you may have a title fight on these fight night TKO boxing cards, but the pay-per-views will be the best of the best. A streamlined product. How many times do we watch boxing and we've seen a rapper rapping, whatever? We see the national anthems. We don't need that no more. It's long-winded and it takes out the momentum of the product. And we get a lot of time wasting on analysis and waiting for the boxers to get ready. The UFC, what makes it so great is you get the fight, you get a bit of analysis, you get the next fight. You get a bit of analysis, you get the next fight. There's a lot of waiting. If there's a quick finish on a card, okay, they may go announce, this person's going into the Hall of Fame, this person's doing this person do that. And they do the best to roll out the fights and roll out the cards. You pay less, boxing pays for like this 8-9 hour slot and they're like, we need to fill it. It's like, no, you don't. They probably do it for advertising so they can get as many adverts out as possible because that's who pays the bills. But that just makes such a boring product for the fans in attendance who have to wait and sit there for hours. And it's why a lot of people trickle in at the end if you're a fan and going in person. But also watching it, it's a terrible product. You need it to be more streamlined. We don't need the rappers rapping. We're not there for a concert. We don't need the national anthem. Nobody cares about that crap. No, barely anyone's very patriotic anymore. We want to go there and watch the boxing. Put on the best production. Put on the best camera work, put on the best cinema, the best, ring announcer to put on the event. Other than that, we don't need all that extra bullshit. Have the theatric entrances. Keep that. Keep the theatric entrances because they make boxing brilliant. That's the one thing I will give credit for boxing against the UFC. I love the show. I love the cinema. I'm a pro wrestling fan as a kid. I love all those great entrances. Keep that. That makes it boxing unique. But all the other shit, keep a streamlined product. It's got all this excess fat that just needs trimming off here and there and everywhere, and you'll get such a better product. And you can then put on all these amazing events and people will tune in. Again, like I said, system-based ranking, I've already spoke about that. The best fight the best and replaceable fighters on short notice. How many times will we see a fight where somebody will pop for steroids or somebody will get injured and they go, Tyson Fury versus Usyk, for example. I'm pretty sure they were supposed to fight earlier in the year. Fury got injured and they go, okay, we're moving it to December. They don't like that because they've booked the event, they've done all this stuff, and then now, we've got to replace the pay-per-view, we've got to replace the fight tickets and whatnot, and it just causes a huge disaster. With the UFC, if that happens, very rarely will a fight card fall through. It's only really happened once on a major level, which is UFC 151, where John Jones refused to fight Chael Sonnen on short notice. But the UFC, what they do, if someone pulls out, okay, this guy comes in on short notice, you're the champion, you're the best, you can beat this guy on short notice. If someone pulls out, Charles Oliveira was supposed to fight Islam Makhachev at UFC 280, 14 days notice, Charles Oliveira gets injured. And Alex Volkanovski, you want to take the fight on short notice? Here's 4 million. Yeah, I'll take the fight. And then now we've got this huge drama and this huge show. Same thing happened. Khamzat Chimaev was supposed to fight Paulo Costa. Paulo Costa gets injured. Kamaru Usman comes in on short notice. That puts all this huge story, huge drama, but the show still goes on. That's what they want for boxing. They can get this person to replace. They did it recently where Shakur Stevenson's fighter fell through and Joseph Parker's fighter fell through. They got, I think it was Bacoli to come in, and they also got a Josh Padley to come in on short notice. But it created for some drama and excitement, and the show still went on. That doesn't happen much in boxing, but they want that to happen. Why? Because it keeps the streamlined product going. The pay-per-view still goes on, the show still goes on. And with the UFC, sometimes you end up getting a better fight and a more exciting fight, and you get all this drama. So that's what they want. Feeder promotions. I wanted to talk about this. So within the MMA world, you've got other promotions like KSW in Poland. You've got Cage Warriors, who are huge in the UK. You've got like LFA in America. You've got One Championship. And One Championship is in their own lane and they're doing brilliant in Asia. But someone like Cage Warriors, they're a UK-based promotion where they bring in UK fighters, fighters become champions. And once they get to a certain point, Cage Warriors knows they're not going to stay. This is a feeder promotion for this UK fighter to go on to the UFC. Paddy Pimblett is an example. Paddy Pimblett fought in Cage Warriors, became featherweight champion. Once he became featherweight champion, he done his time in Cage Warriors, wins and losses. But once he honed his trade in Cage Warriors, UFC goes, Paddy, are you ready? He said no. Then he fought a little bit more. They go, Paddy, are you ready? Yes, I am. He made that huge leap to the UFC, and now he's a global star. That's what I think they're going to try and do with Golden Boy, Queensbury and Matchroom Boxing. They're going to try and make these guys, you put on the small shows in York Hall, you put on the small shows in the O2, you put on the small shows in Manchester Arena, in the NEC in Birmingham, in whatever stadium you put on, and boxing will still stay the same in a micro level at the UK, and they will build stars here. Once they've built those stars, turkial Sheikh will say, okay, now we're going to take him for TKO boxing. Oh, you built this star? Now we're going to take him for TKO boxing. Golden Boy, you built this Mexican star? He's great enough. He's a star. We're going to take him for TKO boxing. And that's what I can see eventually happening is these small promotions will become feeder promotions for the big conglomerate, which is turkial Sheikh and Dana White, which keeps Oscar De La Hoya in a job, it keeps Frank Warren in a job, and it keeps Eddie Hearn in a job. So that's how I think it will work. These will become feeder promotions for the bigger conglomerate, which will be TKO boxing. So where should TKO start? Acquire young talent on nice contracts, but not too nice. 50k to show, 50k to win. These young boxers are making, I think, 5k to show, 5k to win, maybe 10k contracts. They're on these pennies contracts. What TKO are going to do is go, how much are you making there? No problem. We'll pay you X amount and we're going to take you. How much are you making there? Olympic silver medalist? Nothing. Okay, come over. And they're going to acquire these young talents and go, oh, we can take you. And they're going to build a roster. They don't need Terence Crawford and Canelo. Terence Crawford and Canelo are never going to sign up for TKO boxing. Why? Because this is detrimental to them from a financial standpoint. They make millions from the old way boxing is set up. If it's a conglomerate and a monopoly, they will not succeed monetarily. However, these young fighters, in the long run, they will lose out money. In the short term, these young boxers who need money will go, okay, I will make 10 times more now than what I would do in the old system. So this is probably beneficial for me. But in the long run, they will lose out 20 times more because they will make 50k to show, where they're making 5k to show. So they're making 10 times less now, but in the future, they may get 500k for when they're a champion. Whereas in the old way, they would have probably got 2 million. So the financials of how they set up these contracts is going to be key in going forward for TKO boxing. Look for talent across the world. I think there's a lot of boxing champions. You look at the diversity. Japan, Uzbekistan, Ukraine, India, Pakistan, UK, Wales, Scotland, America, South America, Venezuela, Mexico, Colombia. You've got champions from all over. Look at that broad spectrum of the world, even Africa. Get talent from across the world. And some of these talents, like I've said, in Africa, in Latin America, who are on who are living in poverty-stricken situations, who aren't really making that much money, they will go, okay, I can join TKO Boxing and make how much? Yes, sign me up. So that will be key for them. Also, Dana White saying he's going to offer the UFC PI to a lot of these boxers. That's going to be key. They don't probably have high-spec gyms or high-spec training facilities. Or if they do, they're going to have like quite a basic gym setup. They're going to go from a basic gym setup to the best gym in the world with the best facilities in the world. The UFC PI is built in Mexico. The amount of Mexican boxers that can go to that gym now, it's insane. And he's going to get all of them through the door in there. Nutrition sorted, recovery sorted, training facility sorted. The UFC PI is going to be a huge player in this, and it's going to be a huge key to getting these fighters through the door to sign up for TKO Boxing. And for boxing fans who don't know who the UFC PI is, imagine a super gym for combat sports. This is what it is. Oh, and they give you nutrition, they give you food, they give you the access to coaches and training and whatnot, they give you the facilities. Oh, and if you're a fighter under their payroll, it's free to use. They're not going to charge you for it, from what I know. That's how it works with the UFC in Vegas, and they've built one in Mexico. Who in boxing has done the same? Nobody. Create a brand and create promotions. That's where Nick Khan, Ari Emanuel will be key. You know, promoting it across the Western media and the Western world and around the world, and creating that brand TKO Boxing, whether that will be the name or not, who knows, but that is going to be a huge key building point for this promotion and the kind of starting point for it. Where is it going to start? And, you know, build that brand. Build stars on supercards. So how I know it may potentially work is they may do Terence Crawford versus Canelo at the start, TKO Boxing, and they will put new stars that they've signed on under their boxing banner on that card, and they will hopefully get huge wins on those cards, because you're going to go watch Terence Crawford and Canelo on the co-main event. There will be a huge super fight on that co-main event which you watch. Hopefully that person gets a huge win, and then you're like, oh, I'm a fan of that guy now. That's what they're hoping for. They're hoping to put on these huge super fights that you watch, and then all of a sudden you're going to watch all these other stars off the back of it. Former rights deal, Nick Khan is going to probably... ESPN's deal is up with Top Rank, so he's got that. Netflix, he's just signed with WWE. UFC's deal with ESPN is finishing, and they're not happy with them after a recent pay-per-view outage on UFC 313. So Nick Khan now is going to form a rights deal and try and get with a promotion to start off with TKO Boxing. So that is going to be a huge key building block, because if they do get a Netflix, you know, boxing is screwed, because that is so easily accessible to sell to a lot of the public and go, oh, what's going on Saturday? This person's fighting. Oh, let me just watch it. It's on Netflix. I've already got it. Huge key in the starting points of boxing, because that's a huge barrier of entry for a lot of fight fans. It's why illegal streaming is so big, because a lot of the younger fight fans who are 13, who are 12, who are 14, who want to get into combat sports, they can't afford to pay for pay-per-views. Their parents maybe not have Sky Sports. Their parents might not have ESPN, because they just can't afford it. Because let's be honest, for the working class people, it's an extra thing to buy something like ESPN. It's an extra thing to buy Sky Sports, to have an extra bill on. It increases their bill and takes money away from maybe the shopping. So that's why illegal streaming is a huge thing. So if it is on a thing like Netflix, which a family kind of who is struggling may have, that will be a huge thing to get, you know, these younger generations watching combat sports, and will stop that illegal streaming. Illegal streaming will still happen, but it may not be as frequent, and we'll get a lot of new eyes into boxing. This was a last minute thought I had. I was like, how should TKO start? Women's boxing is the key to starting and a huge building block, and I'll tell you why. Women's boxing, there's not as many divisions. So, and women's boxing, and this is no disrespect to women's boxing, is not as entertaining as men's boxing for the most part. You do get some amazing fights and wars from time to time, but it's not as entertaining and it's not as viewed. If TKO Boxing can acquire that female talent pool, which won't be as much money and it won't be as much fighters, build the rankings straight away and start putting on amazing women's fights, people will be like, yo, it works. look what they've done with women's boxing. They've fixed women's boxing straight away, because all they need to do in women's boxing is acquire the talent pool, pay them double or triple what they're getting now, which won't be as much as the men. Okay, they've done that, done. We've got the talent pool. Build the rankings and start. That's your building block to start, because the men's divisions will be too hard to acquire. It's going to cost too much money. There's too many fighters and there's too much going on. With the women's divisions, there's less divisions, there's less women's boxers, and there's less money to pay out. So you can start by acquiring in the first year as many women's divisions as possible and building women's boxing and starting the TKO league with them and showing how it works. Once the formula works with women's boxing and the rankings and the structure and everything's working out, people will be like, oh, women's boxing is successful. Women's boxing is working. Look at the rankings, how it's working. There's one champion, Katie Taylor. She's the champion. Oh, this woman's worked their way up and now she's fighting Katie Taylor and XYZ. And that is the perfect building block to start TKO boxing, is build the rankings using the women's boxing, because it's an easier barrier to entry to start the promotion for the league ranking system than the men's boxing. So that, I think, is a huge key for Dana White and turkial Sheikh, because I was like, how should they start? I have no clue where they should start. And then it dawned on me, if they can make women's boxing as entertaining as the men's boxing, if they can create a clear, concise structure in women's boxing like they'd have in the UFC, then the sky's the limit. You'll show the people, oh, look how amazing we've made women's boxing. Look, they're going to acquire the talent so fast in women's boxing, because Eddie Hearn will not pay Katie Taylor as much as turkial Sheikh can pay Katie Taylor. So it's going to be a no-brainer for them. Will it work? That's the big question. I think time will tell. I think it can work. I think the boxers have a huge say in this, because in the long run, the next generation of boxers, if it does work, will lose out of a lot of money in the long run. In the short term, a lot of boxers' lives will change very quickly. A lot of boxers will make a lot of money fast. The first generation who will join TKO boxing will make a lot of money. The generation after that will make a little bit less. And the generation after that will make a little bit less. And the generation after that will make a little bit less, until there's a clear pay structure. Whereas in boxing right now, the boxers make the most money. In the MMA world, the UFC makes 80%, the fighters get 20%, which a lot of people say is unfair, because if you look at something like the NFL, I think the NFL players get, 50-60%, and the NFL keeps about 40%. The players get more of the revenue than the NFL does. The UFC is like the only promotion where, the promotion itself makes more than the fight, than the people actually, putting their lives on the line. So, in that aspect, I feel like it won't work, because if these boxers who are savvy enough to go, the current structure still needs to remain because we'll make more in the long run, then it could stay. But if that early money is too tempting, I feel like it's game over, and they're just going to acquire these new young talents and go, yeah, we'll make money for ourselves, and whatever happens to you guys, screw you guys. It could happen where they go, okay, no, they play ball and they're another promoter alongside Eddie, alongside Frank, and they all co-promote. But Dana White hates co-promoting. He's never done it with the UFC, so why would he do it with boxing? turkial Sheikh has been talking like, I'm here to take over. I'm not here to play and be another promotion. I'm here to take over. So why would it change? I feel like it's all just pointing in one direction, to take over. Will it work? If I was going to put my guess, yes, it will. It won't be overnight though. It'll be in the long run. And I've been reading a lot of the boxing forums saying, this is bad for boxing, this is bad for the boxers. Yes, I agree with you. The boxers will make less money. It is bad for boxing for the boxers. For us, the fans, in the long run, it's good. We will get a brilliant and more concise and more streamlined product, and we'll get a better boxing product. But for the boxers and the fans who, love and care for the boxers, we will see the fighters and the boxers get more exploited, and it's a shame, really. And I just think it wasn't inevitable. It was always going to happen eventually when you saw how successful the UFC model is. When you can turn up to something and go, it's the UFC, go watch. great. It's like movies. You put this Marvel word and you put it in cinema, people will go watch. Irregardless of how bad it is, they'll go watch. You do the same with Star Wars. Oh, it's got the Star Wars banner. I'm going to play the Star Wars game. I'm going to watch the Star Wars movie. It's got that Star Wars logo. It's the same with WWE. If it's got that W there, you're like, oh, it's WWE. Let me watch. WrestleMania's there. I'm going to watch. UFC, you see those 3 letters, you're going to watch. You don't have that with boxing. With boxing, you've got Canelo's fighting, X person, Crawford's fighting, this person, Fury's fighting, Usyk. You watch for the fight. You don't watch because it's boxing. There's very few boxing purists in the world who watch every single card, and credit to them. But what they want is to go, boxing is on, you guys are going to watch. And if they can acquire boxing, they've got WWE and UFC on a Saturday. That leaves Sunday and Friday where they can put on boxing cards. Where TKO has WWE, they have professional wrestling, they have UFC, they have MMA, and they're now going to try and acquire boxing. They're going to have these 3 huge juggernauts where, irregardless of what show they're putting on, you are tuning in, which means more money for TKO. It means more money for that TKO brand, and that TKO brand taking over the combat sports world, which was the goal when it came together. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I don't know how many of you tuned in for the full thing. I just wanted to do this video because it's been on my mind recently, the whole takeover of boxing. I'm a boxing fan as well as an MMA fan, so I've always wanted to do more boxing videos, and I feel like this is going to be the start to do more boxing content. If you are a boxing fan, tell me, are you happy with this? Are you unhappy with this? Do you want to see this change in boxing? Or do you think this is just more chance for fighters to get exploited? Put your thoughts down in the comments below. Tell me what you thought of the video. Did you like the format style of the video? Do you want me to do more boxing content? Put that down in the comments below. Leave a like if you've enjoyed the video. Subscribe for more boxing, MMA and fight content coming soon. We hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll catch you in the next one.